Mr. Jones here. I'm going to demonstrate how to shade a sphere. Now, a sphere is a form, and forms have 3 dimensions. They have height, they have width, but they also have depth, which makes them 3D. How do you do that on a flat piece of paper? Well, the shape of a sphere is a circle. So if you start by drawing the circle, now a circle is flat. It doesn't have depth. It just has height and width. So how are we going to show that this has depth? And that's by adding value to it, the other element of art. Okay? So in real life, we would have a sphere, we would see where the light's hitting it and where it's dark and where it's light. But since we're just practicing, we have to kind of make it up. So I'm going to pretend like the light is coming from this direction. Now I know that this part of the sphere is going to be the lightest part, and this part down here is going to be the darkest part. Now the tricky part about shading a sphere is you have to follow the contour of the surface. In other words, you can't do your shading flat. If you do, it ends up looking like a burnt pancake. Okay? So I need to actually shade in a curve. And for me, I find it easier to do it a little at a time. So I know it's going to be dark here, so I go ahead and make that dark. And then as it heads towards the light, it's gradually going to get lighter. The smoother your shading is and the more gradually it changes, the more three-dimensional your sphere is going to look. So I go over here and add a little bit more. You also want to be careful about not getting too dark, especially, let's say, if this was supposed to be a white sphere. You wouldn't want to make it quite so dark as I'm shading it now. Now, as you see, it's starting to look kind of three-dimensional. I can come back and add a little bit of, smooth out this shading a little bit. You have to be careful about what surface you're shading on, because if you have texture under your paper, it's going to show up on your shading. Now, I could leave this white, but I want people to know that it also curves here. So I'm going to do a little bit of extra shading here, just a teeny bit, to show that it curves around. Now, one thing you have to be careful of is not to have just a big white circle here, because it'll look like an 8-ball from a pool table. Now, I'm going to add a shadow to it. This is a form. I wanted people to think that it's has depth to it. So I'm not going to do a skinny little shadow like that. That's a shadow of my pencil. That's not thick enough. So I'm going to go back a little bit and create a shadow. Now, if you're painting real things, or drawing real things, you're going to see the actual shadows. So you'll just draw what you see. Same thing with shading the forms. You'll shade what you actually see, not just make it up like I'm doing right now. Now, if there's anything on the surface to help make it look more three-dimensional, make sure that you follow that curved contour so it looks three-dimensional. Okay? You don't always see a full sphere. Sometimes it'll be a half a sphere. And you still shade it the same way. So if the light's coming here, I shade this like this, following that curved contour. If the light's coming in here, this is going to be lighter, it's going to be darker in here. And now I have, maybe a coffee cup. Okay? So that is how you shade a sphere.